And Charles, let's sticking with international affairs. Let's look at Rwanda.
We will, yes. It's a very small country in the Great Lakes region of Africa, one that very few British people have ever been to, and yet one that occupies quite a fair amount of parliamentary time, but also is in the headlines at the moment. So we'll have a quick look at a recent speech by Yvette Cooper speaking about Rwanda.
4 volunteers being sent to Rwanda isn't a deterrent to anyone for anything at all. And the idea that he would spend £10 billion on this fantasy, this fiction, this gimmick, rather than ever do the hard graft. I think £700 million has already been spent on sending just 4 volunteers in 2.5 years. Now, we had often warned that it would frankly be cheaper to put them up in the Paris Ritz. Frankly, it turns out, it would actually be cheaper to buy the Paris Ritz.
So there we are, straight back into it, trying to score political capital from an issue that really has been confected from nowhere and is in effect a charade and a smokescreen because, of course, it distracts from the very real issue of legal migration, Rwanda, of course, being an apparent deterrent to those who would come illegally and migrate into the United Kingdom. But also it distracts from what's been going on in Rwanda, which had a bill put forward to deem it as a safe place to be able to, in effect, deport people. Now, Paul Kagame, the long-standing president of Rwanda, has just been re-elected last week with a 99% share of the vote, which should set 1 or 2 alarm bells ringing. And, of course, by the time the election campaign reached its conclusion, there were only 3 candidates standing, one of which was him. And this is what the chair of the Electoral Commission in Rwanda had to say about process by which the candidates were streamlined.
They feel that National Electoral Commission has purposely or intentionally removed some of the candidates. I think this is not true. And I would want to say that in the process of informing the citizens on the procedure, we mention all those details. So maybe briefly I would say that there is no one who has ever been removed by NEC intentionally. The only thing is that some of them don't follow the laws and the guidelines set for them to be on the list of the country.
So that's how that gets brushed under the carpet there. And of course, that in itself is a further distraction from what Rwanda has been doing in other parts of Africa with the assistance of other agencies. And the focus now is the Cabo Delgado region of northeastern Mozambique. An article in the Financial Times recently telling us that the energy company Total has handed a security contract for a $20 billion gas reserve to the Rwandan state-linked business. So we'll just go through the timeline that has led to this. Of course, there's not enough time, unfortunately, to cover all aspects of this. But in effect, there was a discovery of oil and gas in 2010, which has been deemed to be worth extracting. And of course, it's worth pointing out also that that region of Mozambique is very rich in graphite and rubies. Now, there's been an Islamist insurgency of effectively kind of unknown or indeterminate origins from about 2017 onwards, creating a perilous state of affairs for those that live in the region, but it's not clear quite where it's being funded from or who the insurgents exactly are. But nonetheless, it's drawn in the SADC mission in Mozambique, SADC being the Southern African Development Community. And at the same time, the Rwanda Defence Force came in. Of course, there was very little communication and cooperation between the two, which has led to the withdrawal this year of SAMIM. But in the interim, the EU, among others, have funded the RDF, Rwanda Defence Force, to the tune of €20 million. And now, with the withdrawal of SAMIM, the Total has awarded the security contract to Isco Segurança, and we'll come to have a look at exactly who they are in a minute. But here's the European Council announcing the funding to the Rwanda Defence Force of £20 million. And as the French Institute of International Relations points out, Rwanda expects economic rewards after the success of its army in Mozambique, which suggests very much the motivation for wanting to offer assistance to Mozambique in the first place from Rwanda was, of course, because of such a benefit to them, at least financially. Now, the background to this is that the Isco Segurança company is in effect an offshoot of Crystal Ventures, which was set up in 1995, just after the so-called 100-day genocide against the Tutsi people, which was according to the narrative, ended by Paul Kagame leading the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, back into Kigali. But nonetheless, this has effectively been the platform by which the RPF have continued to invest both within and without Rwanda. It was formerly known as TriStar Investments. It's reckoned to be worth in the region of $500 million. And of course, it owns the security company Isco, which is shown here on screen. So really a brief segment on Rwanda, which of course has many, many complexities. And it just goes to show that whilst we hear about it a lot in Parliament, that is in effect a complete distraction. But what it does demonstrate is the absolute coincidence, of course, of creating or the illusion of instability and money being drawn in from all quarters, particularly the EU, but from other governments, and indeed from the huge corporate entities like Total Energy. So we'll keep an eye on exactly which direction this goes in, but also how this might set a precedent for other countries doing similar things, and indeed what the UK, if at all, pays any attention to.
Okay, thank you for that. Now let's